Welcome back to Radio Taiwan International. You're listening to Geek Out. What's your cup of tea, tickles your fancy, or floats your boat? Join us as we share passions from people in Taiwan and around the world. I'm your host, Michelle Chang, and today in the studio we have back my very good friends, Jared Friesen and Eric Gau.
Hello, peoples. Hey.
What are we geeking out about today?
I believe it is Warhammer 40,000.
I've been talking to people about and been participating in games and painting the models forever. I'm surprised I have not done a Warhammer episode yet.
So you both said to me.
It's about time.
It's about time.
Oh, gosh.
And we were just eating lunch, trying to figure out where to begin, because this world, Warhammer 40K, is enormous. So let's begin at the beginning. What started it? Was it the game or the novels?
The game came first. The game of Warhammer existed 35 years ago. I think first edition was called Rogue Trader before it officially became Warhammer 40,000.
Yeah.
So that came first. It established the very basic outline of what we know as Warhammer today. And over the course of years and different editions, more and more lore got added. People got really invested in the game. People started writing books about it. And it's expanded to a huge... There's an entire sub-branch of the company dedicated to writing books about all the various Warhammer games.
Yeah. Google told me it was like 1987 is when first edition came out. So we're good.
And it started with just the rule book.
Yes.
Correct? Like a PDF. Or, what am I talking about? No. It's 1987. It's not a PDF. But
an
like
actual physical book.
A physical printout with rules in it.
That's what I've heard it called. Papier. Like stapled together. I don't know.
Yeah,
something called bindings.
Bindings.
I don't know. Warhammer 40K is a tabletop like war game. A war game is closer to like
chess.
Chess is a very basic war game, and then like Warhammer is like an extreme extrapolation from that.
What armies were there in the beginning? Do we know?
It was much more like what we would consider a modern day RPG back then. I believe you had one character, or a very small squad. It was not the armies that you see today with, dozens and dozens of models. You had one or two dudes.
And that eventually evolved to become managing armies.
Yes. And now I believe there are 20 plus different discrete factions in the game.
I did not know that. That's a lot.
It's a lot.
I thought there were like 7.
No.
It's like
there's a lot more.
Factions are like the main vine of an army. I think like that's what you're meaning to, like factions off of that too, that have like their own specials.
I would say anything that has their own discrete rule book.
Yeah.
I see.
In this case.
For example, Space Marines.
They're like the flagship army. Like if you buy a box of Warhammer 40K stuff and you see a guy with like shoulder pads on his armor that are bigger than your torso, that's a Space Marine. And they're like the standout army too. Like they have the most widest range of models you can buy, and then like some of the most factions you can do.
We're getting thumbs up from Eric in here in the studio.
That is my personal army. So
So within Space Marines, there are different factions, correct?
So Space Marines is, under the current edition rules, they are like the backbone of the various Space Marine armies. You can play with just that one book. There are several discrete sub-factions. There are Dark Angels, Space Wolves, Blood Angels, Grey Knights, who are also Space Marines, but they do not fall under the generic Space Marine umbrella.
I see.
So in Space Marines alone, there's at least 5 different books. 6 now if you count Imperial Agents with Death Watch under them. Space Marines take up a large percentage of like the 20-something different factions. And then you have the Chaos Marines, evil chaotic counterparts.
Shout out to Kevin, wherever you are.
And now they have the base Chaos Marine faction, 3 sub-factions, and we're assuming that a 4th one is going to come out in this edition as well. So that's another 4 or 5 of the 20-something.
So when we're talking about lore, though, are Space Marines introduced first?
So I think we're talking about like a difference between like publication history and
what he said.
Like, so I think the first thing first to talk about this is kind of describing like the tone of Warhammer 40K.
Okay.
It is widely believed, I think, by a lot of people to like coin the term for the genre grimdark, which is a specific type of fiction that's like very cynical, very mean. There's also elements of like horror.
A little bit of torture porn.
Yeah, like if you've read like Judge Dredd comics or stuff that's coming out in the 80s and 90s, this kind of came out in that era too and just kind of has that milieu going on. So it's like No one's a good guy in this setting.
It's very dystopian. Everything kind of sucks for everybody.
Yep.
And even the quote-unquote good factions need to do horrible things to survive.
Your enjoyment of the setting is like, this is a place where you can box this crappy world up when you're done with it and go on to a nice normal life that you live too. Like, it's the same reason people watch Tarantino movies. No one actually fights like that, but like, it's just fun escapism though too.
I love Tarantino movies. Anyway.
And so like, Space Marines are like humanity's super soldiers. They're the angels of death.
So let's clarify on that though. Like, they're the angels of death, and meaning they're like genetically modified,
Yes.
trained rigorously, almost impossibly for battle.
So this gets back to what he was saying about it being a very grim, dark universe. There are only about 1 million Space Marines in the entire Imperium of Man, which spans much of the Milky Way galaxy. There's about 1 Space Marine for every planet owned by the Imperium.
Oh, wow.
They're that rare.
Okay.
The selection and recruitment process for them is so deadly that the vast majority of aspirants do not survive the selection process, much less the actual training and surgery and modification required to become a full-fledged Space Marine. So even these defenders of humanity, the best of the best, like, they have like a 0.1% success rate.
But why? Why would you need soldiers of this level of awesome?
Because the universe is a dangerous, dangerous place filled with aliens and chaos, which you play one of them.
Oh, I do.
You play one of the Tyranids.
They're called hive fleets.
Yes.
They're like the bugs from Starship Troopers and the xenomorphs from Alien.
Yes, that's basically why I selected them, because I grew, people who grew up in the 80s watched the H.R. Geiger Alien films, right? And those are absolutely terrifying. If I were to pit myself against something, I would imagine the most scariest thing to be Tyranids or aliens, right? So that's this army that I selected in order to fight you guys.
Yes. And that's why humanity needs super soldiers of this caliber to fight threats like that.
So I'm actually very curious. I don't know terribly much about the lore of my own army because I'm a painter, not so much a reader. They come from beyond what is known.
Yes, they are from beyond the Milky Way galaxy. They come from another galaxy entirely.
Somewhere. That maybe they have consumed.
That's the other thing too. They've been kept as this very kind of like murky, like shadowy faction too, because they're just this mindless horde of bugs that
they're unknowable.
Yeah,
you cannot understand them because they have no culture, they have no history, they have no language.
They only exist to eat. Or, as I like to call them, #hangry.
Hive-freet hangry.
Hangry. They invade an area, and all they do is they consume, and that energy feeds their hive fleet.
And they continue on to the next one.
Yes.
The next one.
Now, Jared here plays a very different faction.
I play the Necrons because Warhammer does a lot of like cribbing the notes or filing the serial numbers off of other franchises and whatnot. So I play the Necrons, which are, for aesthetics, picture like ancient Egyptian mummies in space meets like the Terminator skeletons from the Terminator movies.
Yes.
They are this faction of reawakened dynasties of like ancient superpowers from 60 million years in the past of the galaxy. They're the quote-unquote winners of a war in heaven in which they gave up their mortal flesh to these star gods that deceive them in order to get soulless robot bodies that live forever. But now they're waking up to a galaxy that they basically went to sleep on in order to just outlive everything. They're coming back. They're not all there. Some of them have gone, like, the AI codes or, like, the programs that are their personalities have, like, frayed, broken down, so, which comes across as these, like, pseudo-sentient, like, robots having dementia, personality, psychosis. It's very fun.
Interesting. I love, there's a particular model, what do we call him? The melty guy.
Smoothie guy?
Illuminor Xeris, which is the guy who like helped engineer this whole process too, and it's got him like literally like draining like the flesh and blood off of like a human down underneath him too, and so like you get to paint all like the little blood bits like zooping up into his hand. It's
Jamba Juice.
Yeah, we. Yeah.
So what I'm picturing here is that your Necrons are like buried in a sleep, and then a space marine trips over one? Is that what happens? And they wake up? What?
It actually happens quite often in the lore.
It's like, because all their stuff looks like pyramids and stuff. So then you go to a death world, which is like a very hostile planet, and you see this ancient black pyramid, and
You go explore it, as you do.
As you do.
Especially since there's a faction within the Imperium called Mechanicum, which is all about technology and recovering it and trying to understand it. So you see this ancient technological marvel, this building, this pyramid, this complex.
this tomb.
It's just sitting there, right?
Yeah,
It's so old. It must be shut down.
absolutely.
It must be safe to go in there and poke around. It's not safe. You hit the alarm button.
Yes.
They woke up.
And now you have a war.
Yeah, like you have an army of things that are upset that you're here and upset that you have flesh and blood.
Nice.
It's they would say it's offensive.
It's offensive. The flesh and blood is offensive, must be removed.
That's the quote unquote fun of it too, because they were the beings that conquered the galaxy like 60 million years ago. And so they have this innate superiority complex to them too, coupled by the fact that they're in these immortal bodies that don't age or don't have any of the weakness of quote unquote flesh. So yeah, they're just anybody is beneath us if they have skin.
I get it. So it's more like disdain than anything else.
Yeah.
Okay.
But also under the latest lore with the return of the Silent King, which is a great name.
Teams go so hard.
They do eventually want to get back to having flesh and blood because at this rate they cannot increase their numbers. Anyone that they lose is gone forever.
That is true.
And they were also kind of tricked into giving up their flesh and blood bodies. So they want to get back to that. The problem is there's this new group around called the Tyranids who want to eat everything. So without, test subjects to figure out how to reverse the process, they're going to be stuck as these robot skeletons forever. So our Necrons have to help all these inferior races against the Tyranids, or else they're going to be stuck like this forever and ever.
Sorry, not sorry. And we have no problem increasing our numbers because we, toss you guys into the digestion pools, which I think is awesome.
Yes.
And that converts your matter into our matter. So, more of it, more of us.
There's also other factions like the setting does have orcs in space
Oh,
and
yes,
elves in
yes.
space too. The orcs are simultaneously like super aggressive, hyper violent species. They are a genetic organism built for war.
I see.
So like they're supposed to be like a self-sustaining like military campaign essentially.
Okay.
But they're also mixed with like the same mentality and accent of British football hooligans.
This is true. This is fact.
Really?
Yes, like
I love this.
because they don't have like a lot of intelligence for like building things or like organizing and stuff too, other than like we follow the biggest, strongest person. They kind of also have like low-key psychic power too that just kind of like helps their like ramshackle stuff work.
That's why their models look like it's so
like,
primitive.
Their technology works because they believe it works.
It runs on orc faith alone.
Yeah, it's like
That's why red ones go faster.
yeah, it's like
Because they paint it red and they believe it goes faster, therefore it does.
Yeah, it's like a collective, like powerful common sense. Every orc understands that red cars go faster. And so that is a fact for like they just go faster. I was like, yeah, if I just put these tubes together and then bullets in here, it's gonna make a gun. But if someone else gets their hands on it, like a human or the Mechanicum, they're like, why doesn't this work? It shouldn't work. But this orc shot 100 bullets out of it and it worked.
They think it works, so
Yeah.
it does.
So what else is there? So you mentioned elves.
3 flavors of elves. You've got normal, like, dispossessed refugees of, like, their old empire elves who live on these craft worlds, and they live, like, very, like, ascetic lives to, like, try and avoid high emotions because they created one of the chaos gods by indulging in, like, crazy amounts of hedonism and, like extravagance in their empire.
Nice.
Then you have the other faction who's like, we want to keep doing that.
Okay.
And we're just going to go give other people's souls to that instead of ours. And they're kind of
Oh, wow.
like the edgiest faction in a very edgy faction system.
So super hedonistic, and they take over other factions in order to feed those souls to the chaos god that they worship?
Yeah, like they raid into like reality and like grab and snatch people too. So they're kind of like the Underworld Blade movies vibe and aesthetic too, mixed with like the Cenobites.
I see what we're
Hellraiser.
talking
yeah, so
about.
it's like
Oh, okay.
it's not a good time.
This truly was a movie that took from a lot of the 80s genre as we know it.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very much so. And then you have the clowns.
There are also space clowns
Yeah.
that are elves too.
Elf space clowns.
Okay.
Elf space murder clowns. They follow one of the last few remaining space elf gods, and they are jesters. They're harlequins. They're troubadours. They go around spreading the old tales of the ancient elf empire to all the remaining settlements out there, and they're pretty good in a fight too.
Like some of them think like the funniest joke you make is like the face you pull when you die.
I remember getting my butt handed to me by space clowns.
That was my first ever game. My first ever game.
You're welcome.
Eric lent me his models. Michelle lent me a team to play against, and like,
No,
man, they were
that
good.
was scary. It was because me, Michelle, I'm not a huge fan of clowns. No, I don't have the phobia, but not a fan, no. So where did Tau fall into this?
So Tau are a relatively new addition in universe. They've only sprung up relatively recently. They are a technologically advanced civilization with no real presence in the warp, so they don't do space magic that the other races do. They're relatively small on the galactic scale because they haven't really mastered faster than light travel until very recently. So they only had a very small pocket empire compared to the Imperium of Man, which spans the entire
Milky
Way
Way,
galaxy. Their whole shtick is that they go around inviting other civilizations that they come across to join their greater empire. For the greater good is their sort of catchphrase. Everyone works together for the greater good. Unless you refuse, in which case then like, okay, then we'll have to do it the hard way.
I love their models. They're very Gundam-esque.
Yes.
yeah.
There was a period of time when people complained that Games Workshop was just trying to attract the anime and manga crowd with this sort of Asian mech
Right.
aesthetic,
It-
which
it-
I'm like, yeah.
Why not?
That's fair.
Exactly. More
attractive
opponents to fight on the table.
It's an attractive aesthetic because it's cool.
It's
like
cool.
I don't
Cool.
like yeah. Like they kind of got like that like kind of like Gundam mech stuff too, with like the attitude of like a dark take on like the Federation from Star Trek.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Grim dark take.
Yeah.
So my last question to kind of tie this all together is there an overarching plot line that we're following with all of the different novels?
Yes and no. Like they are, the term in the community is progressing the plot, because for a while, like nothing was happening beyond what had happened already. We had a lot of novels based in the past, a lot of novels based in the present, but like things had a stopping point. Like nothing had moved beyond this point until I believe the beginning of 8th edition, like 5 years ago. And all of a sudden things started happening.
Yeah.
Characters from the past came back. The lore progressed. New space marines were invented, which was something that everyone thought was impossible in-game.
Yep. Michelle joined
In
it.
universe. Yes, Michelle joined. Also something that we thought was impossible. So yes, the lore is progressing at this point. This is not to say that every new book pushes the lore forward. A lot of it is still based in the modern era and just like things going on in the periphery. And the universe is so vast that basically every author can just say like, I want to look at this tiny corner and what's going on there.
And you can write a whole book on it.
And you can write a whole book
Yeah.
on it.
Because it's the tension of in the real world, you have to find a reason like why people can continue to buy these models and we don't have to make like new ones or advancing ones too. At the same time, they're also releasing media, which kind of has to have like a plot and momentum and like forward movement. What's the tension of like keeping the settings the same enough so we can keep selling our models and figures that like people can enjoy and just like play for each edition, or moving it past the story too and like things changing or like not too drastic to alienate an entire player base, but like not so stagnant that someone's like nothing interesting is happening here
Right.
either.
You have to maintain the interest
Yeah.
of your base.
Somewhat cynically, it's also a way to sell more models because, okay, it's a new edition. All these models already have rules. We need some reason for the customer base to spend more money. So we can't just create a new unit out of whole cloth and say, oh, this was always there. You just didn't know about it,
Yeah.
right? So
That's
they
true.
can say, okay, with these new developments, this new unit came, or this character from the past has now come back, or this new, demon from the warp has sprung into existence, things like that.
With that much lore, I'm sure that they have many different opportunities, little plot hooks that they can bring back into the game and then create more things to sell.
Yeah, and like you can see like as we've been talking, like each of these factions has their own like little shadowy area of it too, where it's like, oh, we just didn't find it yet.
Mm-hmm.
So like a tomb world will wake up and something new will come out of it.
Right.
Too. Yeah.
More stuff will fly in from beyond the black.
Yeah, or you guys will evolve too.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And that's the fun thing about Tyranids is because they are constantly evolving. They can just say, yeah, because you face these threats, these new organisms came out of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. And Michelle will pay it. For our listeners who might be interested in getting, I mean, we've all seen the game, tables of little figurines marching towards each other and people rolling dice and all of that. But getting into the story that the game inspired, where would you suggest people start, considering there's just so much there?
I started with a series called Gaunt's Ghosts. This is by Dan Abnett. He's considered one of the best authors in the Warhammer community. He's also done things for Marvel Comics and other more mainstream media. So he's a very prolific writer. Mm-hmm. That's how I got my start. But I had already been just reading up on lore on Wikipedia and things like that beforehand. But this was my first official novels. So that's a very good starting point just in quality of writing. And it also focuses on essentially human soldiers, which makes it much more accessible without getting into all the weird, aliens or superhuman stuff that people might not be used to.
It's more identifiable. Yeah.
Short story anthologies too. They give you like tasters of like different things like Space Marines and stuff are doing. A book that I've been meaning to read. It's called The Infinite and the Divine.
Oh, it's a lovely name.
Because there are two famous like Necron characters, Trazen the Infinite, who is constantly adding to his millennia-old museum, and Orican the Diviner, who's like, he can see the future and like predict stuff too. And it's their squabbles. It's like Grumpy Old Men, the movie, but with like millennial guys who like hate each other and have nothing but time to hate each other for.
That actually sounds entertaining to read.
Like there's some point where like they accidentally, one of them accidentally starts like a riot or revolution on a world, and the other one just goes, "You idiot, you got us front row seats to a coup." It's like, so I've been meaning to read that one based on that quote.
So it sounds like there's many different authors in the universe that write in many different styles.
Yes.
So there seems to be something for everybody.
Actually, there are now sort of sub-brands within the lore. So there is a dedicated horror sub-brand. There's a dedicated crime sub-brand. And the rest is basically just sci-fi, shooty battle stuff.
Love it. Well,
so there's something for everyone. Maybe not romance, though.
Thank you so much for geeking out with me.
No problem.
And thanks, listeners, for tuning in to Radio Taiwan International. I'm Michelle Chang, and we'll be back next Thursday with another episode of Geek Out. Bye.